before we go. First is let's talk about plot holes. First one that
that's some important stuff. Maybe speak English now.
Right.
I'm not sure we have enough time.
First one I thought first one I noticed was why wasn't this isn't less of a plot hole and just an inconsistency, or I didn't understand why didn't internal affairs investigate and like question Ward, a long time ago. They chose his first day back on the force rather than, all the time he was recovering from a gunshot wound.
Why is internal affairs so bad at their jobs where almost every other cop we saw was corrupt?
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, there weren't internal affairs though, right? They were feds who were passing themselves off.
They were internal affairs.
Internal affairs. The dudes with the mustache, and they're all like,
"Oh, you're right. You're right."
Yeah, that guy.
The dudes with the mustache. You're gonna have to be a little bit more specific.
I'm gonna take 1 second to say something that might help explain all the plot holes. The script was originally written by Max Landis, which partially explains why it's so tone deaf in terms of like cultural and wokeness, because that he's very smart, but he's very insensitive about anything having to do with other people. He railed against movies because they have women in them. He's not. So there you go. But then they almost completely rewrote the script. It said script by Max Landis, but he disowned it because he said they rewrote most of it. So a lot of the plot holes might have to do with taking a whole thing, gutting it, and then patching it up. You miss stuff when you do that.
That's fair. I try to remember sometimes that there's a lot of... We have this idea when we see a movie sometimes, and I say we as in like just the cultural collective we, have this idea sometimes. We watch a movie and we think that behind the scenes there's this like unified, idea, like everybody's kind of like sitting in a room together drinking coffee and like hashing out all the details and making sure everything jives. But no, it goes from one department to another department. You've got the director who has this idea, and you've got the producers who want it to make money, and then after it's all shot, they go to the editors who have their ideas, and then it goes back to the like it just goes through so many hands. And a lot of that stuff...
why didn't one of them say, this is garbage?
Right? Yeah. There should be someone in that pipeline that says, wait a minute.
There's a movie you can see... It's
not an excuse.
There's a movie on YouTube called Entropy with Steve Dorff, the dude who was the bad guy in the first Blade movie. Can't get an American region, but it's on YouTube. And he's a director. And a lot of the movie is him dealing with the company, basically saying, you need to make this work or you'll never make another movie again. And a couple of producers who are basically like, nah, take out this whole scene. We need more tits. Yeah. And that is actually a lot of what happens in Hollywood, where you get some dude who comes in with money and therefore gets creative control and decides what he wants the movie to be, which is different from what the director wants it to be, which is different from what the writer wants it to be, which is different from what the actors thought it was going to be. It's something by committee, which is almost always kind of a bad thing. Like it either works terribly or works amazingly. Like if you have too much control in one hand, you get the Star Wars prequels. If you have a bunch of people coming together to make something work, you get Empire Strikes Back.
Something that I also didn't like story wise, and I'm curious what you guys think is that. So we know that Jacoby, let the kid go who he chased down, who he thought was, the shooter who shot Ward. And we found that out, and I thought that was actually a pretty cool... I liked that scene where you learned about that and everything, and it was a pretty cool part of Jacoby's story, like that he did that. It really gave the character depth. I liked that a lot. What I didn't like is I really didn't like that the fact that he let that kid go had a payoff. That it had that it did something.
But it didn't.
Well, what it did, because I remember you saying that, Opti. I remember you saying that it didn't matter. But what it did is make Ward have a shift in the way that he saw Jacoby, I feel like.
That's true. It felt a little cheap that they
why did it have to have an effect? Why did it have to have a payoff? Why couldn't it have just been a hard
good
truth,
deed?
They
just had to tie up all their ends. They couldn't It's too small a world, is something I keep saying in movies lately. It's too small a world.
I see what you're saying, Bobby, but like having it be like the gangbanger's son and having it come out and be revealed at that moment and then having the son go home, like, and then having it still mean nothing. Like, other than like Ward going like, huh. Like, I mean, like that's like actually overkill. You know what I mean? Like, because he still gets shot. I mean, like it doesn't, there's a payoff, but it's wrong.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, that almost feeds my point. Like, why do it at all? Why was that even a thing?
Absolutely. Couldn't have Jacoby just been a good dude? And if so, like, or if you were going to make it the son of the gangbanger, like, why wouldn't the gangbanger go, well, shit, I can't kill you now, obviously, because I'm a little bit noble.
You spared my son.
Right.
That would have been at least like good enough for a TV show.
It would have meant something.
Like,
right.
If the player burns an edge, right, to tie this thing in from his background and save their asses, the GM should not go, whoop, okay, so that kid leaves and the guy still shoots you.
No, that's it.
Because this is what I have written in the plot.
Right. The GM goes, you know what? I haven't written that you have to die and be resurrected.
Right. That's a payoff with no payoff.
It's on the rails. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he got railroaded. That's all that happened.
That was storytelling masturbation, and
That's
I've got
exactly what it was.
That's
the movie was just full of it. Really.
If we literally sliced that part out of the film, no one would notice.
No, yeah.
Except for the resurrection.
No,
Well,
he
yeah.
still would
I
have
guess-
gotten shot, and he still would have been resurrected. Take
Yeah,
out
there would
the
have been-
whole little exchange with the father-son thing.
Oh, right. Yeah. You're right.
Because the resurrection didn't even really matter.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like,
Are we going to talk
if you
about?
cut it out?
Are we going to talk
It
about the
was-
plot hole where she, like, doesn't talk English the entire time in
Right.
really important bits, and then all of a sudden decides like, oh, I trust you now.
I think
And
we've mentioned
somehow-
it enough times that there's.
And she also
things left.
has
And-
she also knows spell words that cause people to blow up in fire, but she doesn't ever use
And like
them.
doesn't use them. Right. Yeah.
Also, she got crazy sick for some reason, but then he didn't get crazy sick in the same way for the same reason. And sometimes she got sick and sometimes she didn't. And
apparently, resurrection is the first spell you learn in apprenticeship. I mean,
But here's
to
the
be
one,
fair, I
here's
guess
the-
if you're gonna start with any spell, you might as well start with a really useful one like that. But
Well, no, she goes, I only know a few spells, and then she's like, this is the war word, which is apparently like the big spell that kills people.
so, what words does she know? How to vaporize people, how to resurrect people, how to hide something in your arm, and how to turn someone into some very like Geiger-esque wall art.
She knows
And the
power,
blind
word,
spell.
kill, and resurrect, and she's like, but I'm level 1.
Yeah.
how many spells
Maybe-
was that? That was like 6 spells. That's like how
Total.
many you start with in Shadowrun, right?
About.
Yeah,
No, you start with,
honestly,
like,
yeah,
12
her
or something.
character.
No
honestly,
one
I feel
starts
like-
with res.
I feel like we could have erased Tika from the movie pretty much entirely. And
Yeah, Cliff,
only
you
had to
really,
do a
really
little
didn't
bit of
like her,
stuff to
did you?
stick that together. No, there's nothing I liked about that character.
I agree. She had no purpose.
She was there
she
to
had a purpose. She existed to illustrate the point for the other two. She was only there to grease the wheels for our main two characters to get where they
to
had
get
to
to the
go.
very end where she said they're good,
Yeah, pretty much.
which is not even true. Like it's not.
One thing I did
Jacoby's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah,
one thing
Jacoby's good.
Jacoby is good. And maybe we should stop there. Jacoby was the best thing in this movie, and he was
Yes.
great.
by far.
Yes, he was. He was.
It was amazing.
Only thing in this movie. The only good thing.
Even then,
But,
some
like,
of this
but so
dialogue felt
good.
like a 5-year-old. You know,
Yeah,
You make-
in
you
a
make
good
a
was
face because you
great.
don't get enough pancakes.
Actually,
thank
okay.
you, preschool.
Well, speaking of that, can we talk about that final scene where he like goes on like that 5-minute rant about like what happened?
Yeah.
Like just sum up the movie prior.
Cut the
It's-
whole thing out.
It's almost like it was put there because they were like, hey, remember those 2 like Magic Task Force guys we introduced that haven't done a thing this entire movie? Let's have them hear them out.
Like, I get what they were trying to
What did
do
they
with
do?
the whole
What
this
did
is
they
how we
do?
cover our asses, but they did it in a way that was completely wrong.
Yeah.
You just you come to them like sitting in an interview room giving their deposition, and you have like the orc just looking at him like, and he just like looks at him, and they've established trust, So he doesn't say anything. Is that what happened? He goes, looks at him. Yeah, unequivocally. And then you move on to your little medal ceremony. That would have been cleaner. That would have said more while saying maybe 5,000 words less, because my God, that was word salad.
So do you how do we feel that like at the end, like Jacoby goes from this guy who's going to tell the truth and be like right on all the time and then all of a sudden at the very end he's like, yeah, I guess we do need to lie to be good cops. Like that like again.
No, that is something I thought of while it was happening. I didn't like that they made him break character in that scene only for the purpose of comedy, basically.
Yeah.
It was out of character. I liked him for his naivete and his idealism in spite of the world, you know. So, and then that
it was almost, considering he's an unblooded orc who's been, by his own words, shit on by orcs his whole life. He's got an awfully strange aw shucks thing. Sometimes his naivete was too much. Oh, they're shooting at us. What?
Yeah, I think they played up a little bit of that. I don't know, that into the alpha beta relationship with him and Will Smith. Ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I believed the.
I wasn't sure what to make of that.
I believed the they're shooting at us type attitude because he's, you know, a rookie cop, you know. I believed that until they showed us so much more, like the only stuff they showed us about how the orcs live, and then I started thinking, there's no way he made it this far without being shot at, you know, like growing up.
Actually, he said his dad and his grandpa were both unblooded, which made me. This is one of those things that actually they did well. It made me go, how did that happen? Like what?
Right.
How does
right.
How does an orc get to that point where his father and his grandfather are unblooded if being unblooded means that you are outcast from every other orc? Like, there's a story there, and I'm glad they didn't tell it. You know,
Right.
because it made me think, like they're probably somehow different in some weird way.
You know, Lovecraft said about horror that the oldest and most powerful emotion is fear, and the oldest and most powerful fear is fear of the unknown. But what they don't talk about is that one of the best narrative devices you have is the unknown. If you mention something but don't, expository on it, you leave room for the audience to fill in the blanks and make the world their own.
Right.
And when you like spell everything out, it kind of loses that malleability that makes it fit everyone. You know,
And
it shows a lack of trust in the audience.
If they're planning on making other films, which I think they're making a sequel to this.
Yep.
Maybe. At least they announced it from what I heard, at least.
That's right. Another viewing party.
Best thing to come out of this movie.
Yeah. I'll keep these for the next year.